call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 7 p.m. on the 15th of February 2016. We have two items. The first item is A16-09, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to purchase an Altech digger for the Amherst Electric Department through the Ohio State Cooperative Purchasing Program at a cost not to exceed $205,000. Mr. Jeffries, you submitted this.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to, I'm going to pass this one off to the mayor to give you an overview on it, because he knows a little bit more about it than I do. So.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Like you've read, this is a digger truck. It's the truck that digs the holes in the ground, lifts the poles up, puts it in the ground. It also uses the boom to lift big, heavy transformers. It's probably one of our oldest trucks in the fleet. I know it's in dire need of being replaced. We want to purchase this through the Ohio State Cooperative Purchasing Program. That's where the state has already gone out for bids, and they allow municipalities to buy, take advantage of saving the cost of bidding these items. So this has already gone out to bid through the state. Like I said, it was a 1987 is the one we're trying to replace. You notice in the specs, it's not necessarily bare bones unit, but there's no frills. This is a machine that's going to do the job necessary, and I think it's a very good price. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad. And we do not need the emergency. We'll buy this when we can.
Mr. Auditor.
I caution council tonight that any of these items not be passed on emergency until the budget is passed, because none of the money is appropriated.
Okay.
My comment.
So you agree with
Yes.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Winarski?
Yeah, and thank you very much. I have no doubt that truck needs to be replaced. I've spent half a day working with the electrical department. It needs to be replaced, needed to be replaced. My question is, it's not really much of an upgrade, in my opinion. It only drops a 44-foot pole. Of the poles that we're dropping, how many are in excess of the 44-foot that we have to spend money on sending someone out or outsourcing?
I asked the question to our electric department. They said this would do everything we needed to do.
Okay. So I was on the, maybe that's, weren't we dropping some 50-foot poles, or was that a stretch a while ago where we had to bring in a company to do that?
We'll probably bring the company in because the one we had probably wouldn't lift them that high. The hydraulics are really bad.
Okay.
So more than likely, I mean, I've got all the faith in the world of our electric department supervisor that he wouldn't be buying a truck that wouldn't do all the jobs we needed to do.
Okay. I guess my concern was that there's additional costs, could we recoup them? I guess I already made my point. You've answered it. Thank you. I'll leave it at that. That's all.
Thank you. I had pointed out to me that we need to take attendance, so we'll pause. Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Van Truen?
Here.
Mr. Bukovac?
Here.
Mr. Goodell?
Here.
Mr. Winarski?
Yeah.
And the chair is present. Mr. Miller? You had I thought you had your hand.
No, I was just going to ask about attendance, but you're
Okay.
good.
Anybody else? Mr. Janik?
Is there any scrap metal costs or anything that comes back to us from the other one, or I mean,
We'll either put it on eGov deals, or we'll actually look at the opportunity to possibly trade it in. Just because it might not be good for a municipal power company, it might be good for somebody that has other uses for it. So we will look at the cost that we can get from it. And just one more comment. Some of the items in this today's the money isn't appropriated yet. It is in the budget, but this happens to be one of them in the interim budget. There would have been enough. There is enough in this one for this item.
Could you speak to the lead time it takes to actually get the vehicle?
It could be 6 to 8 months once
So
the
it could be
item's
before the end
passed.
of the year.
Yes.
Mr. Miller and then Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This digger, do we have any right now plans for using this, that this would be go 3 readings, no emergency, that should take care of it, even with the possible 6-month delay time? Do we have anything coming down the pike that needs to be?
Every day. I mean, whenever there's a pole that gets hit by a car, or anytime there's a need to lift a new transformer, The one we have is somewhat adequate, but there might be an opportunity where, you know, emergency might do us some good.
But we have no,
There is money in this interim budget for this item.
right, but we have no, right now, plans
There's no immediate plans unless, like I
for
said,
a
unless
major
transform-
electric project.
Exactly.
Okay, so you don't have any, that's all I have today, at least for this issue.
Mr. Goodell?
My questions were similar to Mr. Miller's about the truck that we have, if it would be adequate until this passed.
We think so.
You think so? Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
I see no further questions or comments. I will entertain a motion to take this to the floor. Mr. Goodell?
Take this to the floor of council.
Mr. Ventura?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to take this to the floor of council. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. It's taken to the floor of council. The second item I have on the agenda is A16-10, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to purchase a 2.5-ton dump truck for the Amherst Street Department through the Ohio State Cooperative Purchasing Program at a cost not to exceed $145,000. Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will speak to this one. You all got a new document in front of you tonight. That original request we put in was based on I believe, an expired specification. So it had to be rewritten to a current specification. So we did ask for an increase from $145,000, not to exceed $145,000, now not to exceed $146,000. None of the specs were changed on that. It just we had the wrong bid, or an expired bid. So this ordinance is for purchase of a 2.5-ton dump truck with a plow for our street department. As the mayor had mentioned about the digger truck, this pricing is from the Ohio State Co-op Purchasing Program. We are replacing the oldest vehicle in the street department. That's a 1996 dump that's got a rusted out box. That's the oldest truck that they do have in that department. I understand that truck's already been passed down to the street department. Or I'm sorry, water department? Okay. The water department has then passed a truck down to the arborist, I believe. And then the arborist will have a retired truck that'll go on the eGov site for auction. And we're also requesting this without the emergency.
What kind of lead time do we have on that?
About the same.
About the same time, yeah.
And just for your information, there is not money in the final budget for this vehicle, so it'll come hopefully 2 weeks after. It'll just follow behind the budget.
Okay. Mr. Miller.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm looking at the two proposals here. And the first one has 144,897. The next one 145,857, about 1,000 more. I noticed there are a couple different line items. It says the first one had a $14,050 purchase and install snow plow and salt spreader from Judco, and then the second one has a purchase and install hydraulic equipment package for $63,433,000 from Judco. And then it says purchase Freightliner truck with Henderson body type versus a Valley Freightliner. And I noticed that the Freightliner truck with Henderson body package, the first one was $126,818, and the second one is $78,355. Is there a change or a reason for this change in hydraulic equipment package? Is that something that's, what caused this?
It's just if you go back to what Mr. Jeffrey said, that was from a 2014 spec. The way the specs went out from the state were just written differently. They're pretty much the same exact type vehicle, just written different. We've got the total specs like this if you'd like to come and read them. The hydraulic package includes the dump, the snow plow, where the other first bid actually included the snow plow or something different. You're getting the same exact equipment, maybe a different type of truck, but all the same specifications, just written differently because this is the 2015 specs that went out to the state.
And so the state will purchase this?
Nope, the state puts them out for bid, and that's the best and lowest price in the entire state. And just like our salt purchases, it allows a municipality like us to take advantage of the state bidding process.
Any chance to keep most of this local, right?
Nope. Whatever the state bid, and you're gonna save thousands of dollars. And there's not really local companies that I know that handle trucks like this.
Judco's local.
Well, that's where it says. I mean, wherever the bid come from, that's where we're gonna send. It's Cleveland, I believe.
It is Cleveland.
When I thought you meant local, I thought you meant within the municipality of Amherst.
No. No, that's, I just meant as in state and county would be best. That's it, Madam Chair.
Mr. Auditor?
Yeah, to back up Costello's point, a lot of these bids that go through the state are, state bid. They could be here, Cincinnati, Dayton, Toledo, whatever. So unfortunately, we would like to keep it local as much as we can, but a lot of this is driven through the state. So, the state does have the larger buying purchasing group, so at least we can buy off of that. So, we are probably getting the best price available.
Very good.
Thank you. Mr. Van Dalen?
I noticed there aren't any dates on either of these documents. Maybe it's a good suggestion to make sure that any kind of correspondence like this has dates on it. It would cause less confusion in the future. I don't think it's any one person's fault, but it might have been easier for us to understand the differences between these two. And with that, has anyone moved yet to send this on to floor council? I'd move to send this on to floor council without the emergency, correct?
Maybe on a third reading, you could.
Okay.
Mr. Winarski?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to take A 16-10 to the floor of council. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Taken to the floor of council. That's all I have. Mr. Jennings?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Van Turen? Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned at 7:15 p.m. Thank you.
Good evening, members of council and administration. We'll call the Utilities Committee meeting to order at 7:16 p.m. We'll use the previous attendance for this evening as well. We have one item right now for us to review. This is an ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract to participate in the remaining requirement service energy supply schedule with American Municipal Power, or AMP. Mr. Mayor, would you like to elaborate? Or
I would. We buy our purchases, our bulk purchases, two different ways. We have, the bulk of our purchases is through the contracts that city council has passed over the years, where we either get into an agreement with hydro energy or certain gas-fired plants. We buy about 75%, or a little bit more of our energy that way. Those are all set contracted rates per kilowatt. We buy the other 20 to 25% of our rate of our electric needs over they call it our remaining requirements on the open market. Just like anything else, the open market can fluctuate quite high and low at times, depending on the peak requirements. In the winter, when there's less electricity left to buy on the open market, it's generally more expensive. So what AMP has done, rates are low right now, just like your gas utility bills. The rates are low. AMP is offering us the opportunity to lock in a rate not to exceed 4.9 cents per kilowatt. They're speculating somewhere around 4.5 cents right now. We typically spend, we could spend as high as 6 and 7 cents per kilowatt on the open market, which just that remaining 20%, every penny per kilowatt is about $300,000 within a year's time. So if we have the opportunity to lock this in and stabilize our remaining requirements at less than 4.9 cents, if you notice the email within your packet from Mr. Courtney, who is our rate consultant, suggested that we should take advantage of this, and I agree. So if you read through the contract, it gives me the authority, just like your gas, your natural gas, you can call in and lock in your rate for several years. They're giving me the opportunity to go on, as mayor, to go onto a recorded line, check the market daily if I wish, pick a time, sometime before 2017. This contract starts in 2017 for 3 years, and it will allow us to stabilize that portion of our electric purchases. And no necessarily any reason for emergency. We have till 2017 to enact this. The emergency would possibly give me an early opportunity to lock in a rate. So again, it's your choice. I'll take
Thank you,
any
Mr.
questions you
Mayor.
might have.
Mr. Van Turen?
So passing it on the emergency might give us the opportunity to save taxpayer dollars, is that what you're saying?
Possibility. It's a gamble at this point.
All right.
But rates are the lowest they have been in history. You know,
I think they-
our recent history, the rates are low right now on the open
Gambling in order
market.
to save taxpayer dollars is, I think, a worthy reason to use the emergency. It doesn't save life or limb, but I would move that we send this on to the floor of council with the emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Van Turen. Mr. Miller, did you have a point to make?
I can give it a second, but I got some questions on this.
Yeah. Mrs. Wasilki seconded the motion. And then, Mr. Miller, do you want to make the comment?
Please. How about gambling with anybody's tax money? I know how against gambling we were earlier when they wanted to bring gambling in Amherst, but hey. So I'm not into gambling, but I am into making sure that we pick an outfit that's not going to stick us with extra charges. Now, if I remember correctly, AMP right now is going to have us sign the contract through 2020.
Correct, for 3 years.
And it says the actual monthly transmission fees, congestion charges, and ancillary services, unforced capacity charges, losses, customer charges, security costs, replacement energy, and taxes or other such costs incurred by AMP to deliver the energy will be passed along. Right now, $49 per megawatt breaks out to 4.9 cents. What did we pay last year from AMP? Was it lower or higher than 4.9?
Just above that. We had some energy that actually went offline that was lesser expensive, the coal and all that. So we did have some real low cost energy we're not able to take advantage of anymore. We have some hydro energy that's going to come online that's fairly expensive. So we did pay a little bit more than 4.9 cents on the market. I mean, on our share, our contracted share. We paid a little bit more than that on our open market on average. And let me talk about the transmission charges. Again, I'll compare it, for just comparison's sake, to when you go and buy another supplier for your natural gas. You pay those transmission charges. We pay those transmission charges whether we purchase them on the open market, through this contract, or even the contract, the 70% that you've already went into contracts with. No matter which supplier you're going to use, you're going to pay those transmission charges and fees, and those are generally a little less than 3.5 cents a kilowatt. So you're going to pay those no matter where you're buying your electric from.
Now, one of the things that this will do is this will obviously prevent us from bidding, because I read that as well in this contract. It says, signing this contract means that we will, and this would be on the third page of what was given to us, section 3, that competitive bidding is not required on the municipality's acquisition of its right to secure energy under remaining requirements energy supply schedule. In the event of any competitive bidding requirements are applicable, any such competitive bidding requirements that may otherwise be applicable are hereby waived. So have we looked at what it would be to get it from maybe First Energy or any other outfit?
You can't do that. I mean, we're involved with AMP. The bidding, that's state law allows us to go into contract with AMP, and they're doing the bidding for us. They're going out and looking for those lowest rates. And each day or each week when these rates are available, they're giving us the opportunity to lock that rate in. No different than when we're going out and buying these on the open market. We take whatever's available, and sometimes it's fairly expensive.
So we're looking to lock in 4.9.
Less than 4.9. I'm speculating if I went into this today, it would be somewhere around 4.5 cents.
Are
And
we
that's
on,
significantly lower. than
are
what
we
paid
on
in
the
past.
hook for the legal fees from their lawsuit that AMPS, that
council,
that we are in?
council
an
approved,
ownership of?
council approved that agreement. It's still in litigation, so when that is settled, we'll be liable for our share of that.
So we're gonna enter in a contract with a company that's gonna pass along possibly very substantial
That
legal
contract's
fees.
already said and done.
Right,
Council's already
right.
signed, already
Right.
agreed to that. There's nothing to, this is just completely different.
To continue with a company that's getting sued.
We're not
Okay.
the only, we're not the only one.
All right, I'm a little concerned of getting into another contract for 3 years with a company that we got into before and then has been sued and is now in court, and the way things are looking, litigation's we could be on the hook for a substantial legal decision as being a part owner in AMP. So
I don't think so. I mean, we're part of AMP.
we're
Yeah,
part of
it's
AMP?
completely,
We're part of AMP because.
We are AMP.
Part of AMP because we entered into an agreement with AMP, I don't know how long ago, or wait for a month.
It's the company that helps us buy our bulk
AMP
purchases.
AMP is a co-op that allows us to purchase electricity cheaply, and the overall agreement with AMP was passed by council
Quite a few years ago.
beyond a few years ago, beyond, I've been here 7 years, it's beyond my tenure here. This is just another, and I wish Mr. Courtney was here to explain it, it's just
That'd be
another,
helpful.
we have obligations to purchase certain amounts of.
We only have
of energy
contracts
under
that,
the contract.
yeah, we only have contracts through AMP, and that council is approved to buy 75 to 80% of our purchases. We have to go on the open market every month and buy these other needs that the residents have. This is an opportunity to get out of a fluctuating market and stabilize that at less than 4.9 cents a kilowatt.
But Mr. Miller's talking, and I understand your concern about we are in this contract for a while,
Right.
and I'll have to look at when we started this, but our obligations under the contract, they exist, and we have to comply with the terms.
Sure.
And I understand we got hit with a large set of attorney's fees, litigation costs, et cetera, that's still going on, and that is a concern. However, we're still within this contract, we need to comply with the contract terms. This is just another way of meeting our obligations to purchase.
Under that original
energy
contract.
Under the original contract.
And see, I wish John Courtney was here as well, because I would have liked to pull him aside and asked him a couple of these questions as well.
If there's any of
So-
those questions you like, send them to me and I'll
Right.
get them answered to you.
So with that being said, we're under a long-term contract. This is just a bidding process within that contract. So our hands are still kind of tied. But I agree with the mayor. If he can lock us in on a good rate for 3 more years within that original contract, then I would support that. I just get a little nervous about supporting or getting locked into another. I'd love to see that contract during extension.
All said and done, when we compare our electric rates compared to the communities and other electric service around us, we're significantly lower. probably around 3 cents a kilowatt cheaper in overall price once you figure in all the transmission fees, our rates, our PPA. We're still, when we compare them every month, we're significantly lower than First Energy and surrounding municipalities.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law Director. Mr. Bukovac and then Mrs. Wasilek had comments.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I understand the need for the contract. I understand, obviously, we're an owner, we are AMP, so that's not an issue for me. I guess one of the couple of questions I have is, without this contract, who would be making those purchases on the open market?
AMP does for us.
AMP does for us. I guess the one question I have really, and I know you're gonna be looking at some of the pricing and making that determination. Is there any reason why Mr. Courtney's not doing that with a better vision potentially of the energy futures to determine when?
Me and him speak on
The
this. We
most,
just thought it wasn't necessary to bring him in right away. That costs money and time on his part. If you guys need to ask him more questions, I'll gladly invite him.
No, I
But
think-
between us, we thought we could handle this. But he will be with, before I agree to that, I will be talking to Mr. Courtney before I pick a rate.
Excellent. So the question I had was, is that something Mr. Courtney can do, is actually, we give it off to Mr. Courtney's hand, to let him determine when the best time to pick the rate is, as opposed to.
The ordinance that AMP wants is signed and agreed to by the mayor. So I can use him as a consultant, but it needs to, the council needs to give the mayor authority to pick that rate.
Okay.
And that's the contract language that AMP actually sent, that we started with.
Did you get any feedback from Mr. Courtney on what the energy futures are going to be? Do we see a long-term trend of it staying as is, going down with, you know?
His suggestion, if you read the email, says he highly suggests we take advantage of this opportunity.
Understood. Does he have an understanding of when the best time might be within the next 3 to 6 months of when the lowest price is going to be?
Nope.
By evaluating the futures? He does not. Okay. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bukovac. Mrs. Wasilek?
Yeah, a couple of things. I do want to caution people, if we're concerned about AMP Ohio being sued, and being involved in a lawsuit with them, there is, to the best of my knowledge, there is no electric utility or utility group that is not being sued for something similar across the United States. It's a pervasive problem that was caused by the cancellation of power plants, basically political decisions, so that go back, all the political decisions made within the last decade. So that is why they're all involved in these kind of lawsuits. So nobody's immune to those. The other thing is that, Mr. Law Director, do you have plans to review this contract?
I'll review this contract.
Okay, so, basically,
I mean, it's a basic contract, it's pretty straightforward already, but,
okay.
yeah.
So you're going to make sure that, any changes or anything
Right.
that you suggest are incorporated in the
That'll be
contract?
done before the next
Okay,
meeting.
excellent, okay, excellent, okay. Thank you, I just wanted to hear that. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. You have another point?
Thank you. I just noticed here on section 202.1, number 1. So what would happen is Mr. Courtney would lock in a rate. You are the MAR, if you're going to use an acronym, Municipalities Authorized Representative. And via either recorded line or email, he'll give you a rate, and you'll have a decision whether you want to lock that in. Is that correct? And then from
Correct.
there, that rate will lock us until 2/20.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's just confirming that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We have the original motion on the floor from Mr. Van Turen to take this to the floor of council with emergency and seconded by Mrs. Wasilek. All in favor?
Let me give him some of the history on this thing.
Oh,
Years
think
ago,
you'd like to speak.
we passed an ordinance, so the EPA came out and they issued 3 coal permits on the Ohio River, and those are the last 3 that were going to be issued. And so Ample got one, and we started to build a coal plant, and halfway through, they decided to go gas. So the bidding went out and so forth, and I don't know exactly what happened. We don't know what exactly happened, but there was a lawsuit filed between Ample and the contractor, and it was quite a substantial lawsuit, and the bills are substantial for that, and we pay them so much a year as the bills come in, because we don't know exactly to this day how much that's going to cost us, but we're obligated to that contract, and as everybody is in the consortium that belong to AMP, everybody has their portion compared to how much electricity they use and so forth and so forth. So that's the gist of that thing. It's been going on for probably 10, 11 years now. So actually, probably longer than that, 13.
Mr. Kukuka?
That's part of under the audit, especially over the last 3 years with the state auditors in our office, we've had to report on that, and unfortunately, we cannot give an end time to that because we don't know when this is going to be resolved. So we just report that we are part of this lawsuit, that we are part of the shareholders of that. So we do not know what our actual bill is going to be.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, then if we could be on the hook for a certain amount of money, is that something we would end up having to pay
Exactly.
immediately? Should we be
As the
budgeting
city
for that?
manager,
Should we be holding
we
money
are-
back
we
for
are
that?
budgeting for that.
And what line item, do you know where you're putting that in the budget, where we're holding that?
We're just not spending that money yet. It's in the budget,
So it's in the general fund right now?
and it could be absorbed into the rates. We don't know what we're going to do yet.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? We'll go back to the motion to take this to the floor of council, passing with the emergency so that the mayor can begin negotiations. They're looking for that best rate. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. The ayes have it, and we will entertain another motion. Mrs. Vassell? Thank you. Mr. Goodell? Second. We have a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned at 7:35.
That's all right.
Call to order the Streets Committee at 7:35. Using the attendance from the previous 2 meetings, from Finance and from Utilities. That will carry over. I have 3 items on the agenda for this evening. Our first item is A1607, authorization to bid and award the 2016 street rehab program. Mr. Mayor, would you like to comment on that agenda item?
Before you have a cover sheet that has the engineering costs, the capital outlay costs, and all the streets outlined, and the duties that Bramhall Engineering will perform. I think we're upwards near 5 miles of streets this year. It's a pretty aggressive program. We will be planning on, in Nowaka, we have a road program, the east part of Cooper Foster Road, probably slated for 2 years from now. So I'm trying to get as many of the roads they're going to need attention in the next few years paved as quickly as possible so we can save our money for that project. But streets are listed. Intermittent repairs, we did some of that last year. It helps prolong some of our streets that don't necessarily need paved but have some bad spots. And the crack sealing is very important. It extends the life of a road for a few more years till it needs resurfaced. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
Before I go, Mr. Neal, I have a real quick question. I noticed, is the actual allocated money, how is it compared to last year's? It seems to be a little higher than last
It
year.
is higher than last year. We have money that was carried over. The tax that people pay every year is in that account, and I did spend more, but I think if people are putting forth agreeing to pay that tax on solely the streets, I think it's our due diligence to use it as quick and as feasible as possible.
Great, thank you. Mr. Goodell?
I know last year we utilized that, I guess they call it the pothole truck, for fixing some of the streets. Were you looking to do any of that?
That
with
could
this
be part of
department?
the intermittent repairs.
Okay. 'Cause
We could very possibly use it.
I've noticed that, those patches seem to be holding up pretty well through the weather that we've been having, so just think that if we could use that again, that would be great. So
Thank you.
that's all I
Thank you.
have.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, I applaud your efforts to continue to improve our streets. I think that this, for any incoming resident or neighbor business, streets are key. I mean, streets define a city, and people will avoid a place or go to a place depending on how easy it is to traverse. And I do appreciate your efforts here as well. I only have one question. I definitely think that we could do a lot more, but we don't have the money, so I appreciate how you're attempting to take care of the major ones. I agree with Councilman Goodell that Patcher worked really nice. It seems to be holding up in the streets that both him and I will see quite often. But the one concern I have and the worry I have is there's residents on Wood Hill Drive, and they're concerned about those trees. They're concerned that any tree or any asphalt resurfacing or work done on Wood Hill may compromise some of those trees. Now, of course, many of them are overgrown and their roots are part of the problem, but what are we looking at there? Are we looking at
We're looking at the trees. I mean, we're looking at all the infrastructure that's in that road. We probably could do some more extensive work than we're going to do, but that road's really falling apart. So we're going to do what we can to save the trees. We're going to mill and fill and do a little bit of infrastructure work there, but not much. But we're going to try to get a new pavement on there with as little environmental impact as possible.
Okay, and I appreciate that attempt. That is a unique part of our city. That street is an old and beautiful drive, so hopefully we'll continue with that. So I appreciate your efforts to maintain as many of those trees as possible, but there are some massive drainage issues, and that's the second part of that Wood Hill. There is a large amount of water coming out of Maud Needing Park, and it's coming between a couple residential houses, and it's going across the sidewalk. You're having erosion hitting the sidewalk, and then it's coming onto the street and eroding there, and that'd be right at the top of the hill. So if you're heading from Park Avenue towards Cleveland, about a little short of where it crests, there's a lot of water coming in, and I'm hoping that we can look at the drainage in the park and see if we can get that water rerouted so it's not coming between the homes onto Wood Hill. I think we may be resurfacing a street that water will tear up again real quickly. So I don't know if you've seen that, if any residents have brought that to your attention, but I'd like to make sure that you guys have somebody take a look at that, or whoever.
If you
may
just
be.
go through regular channels, I'll either send a note to
Yep.
a utilities department or the street department. We'll definitely look at that.
Absolutely. And I will get you those addresses as to between the two homes that large current of water on a heavy rain will come through. That's all I have for the street paving questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank you,
Janik?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this list. Again, it's great to see that the improvements will keep going. The question, though, pertains to the subdivision of Meadowbrook, Quail, and Killdeer, which are currently concrete, using concrete for those subdivisions. I know obviously concrete costs more to replace, but has there been a comparison in relation to replacing the concrete that was originally installed compared to the asphalt?
and our road guys, you know, the guys in the street department are real big, they're a plethora of information, they really give good advice. Getting that road smooth is main priority. It is concrete, we're gonna do some grinding of the high spots and some full depth repairs, but we are going to overlay that with blacktop. It will be a nice smooth finish. I think a nice smooth finish with blacktop for 1/3 of the cost is a whole lot better than a bunch of, you know, crappy concrete, for lack of layman's terms, I guess.
Has anyone talked to the residents about this, though? That'll bring it back.
The engineers have been out there. We probably haven't. I'm sure if they don't like it, they're gonna be down here now. But that's why there's 3 readings to this program. Give residents and people time to discuss this.
I know that you mentioned it's gonna go back to the Brayburn section, which is all concrete and brand new, and
Correct.
a couple of those residents have already mentioned that.
But I'll be real frank here. If enough residents don't want that and they decide by majority they don't want blacktop, it's not gonna get done this year. So that's our way of affordably putting a nice smooth road that I think is gonna last for many years and be better for the residents that live there.
The other question pertains to both Killdeer and Quail, and the circle areas that are in the middle
The
of the
cul-de-sacs right now, some of them I think have green spaces in the middle, and the residents have expressed their concerns over that. They don't like the way it's maintained, they don't like the way like it looks, so we're hoping there's enough money in this budget to go ahead and just pave that whole cul-de-sac. Just depends on how the prices come in. We're gonna try some recycling in place in a couple of these streets that could save a significant amount of money.
Right.
So if there's money in the program, we hope to completely pave those cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, the city vehicles can't make the turn. They have to, you know, keep turning the vehicle and reversing, and at least
So
2 or
we're gonna
3
do,
times
we're gonna
to
do our
get there.
best.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any other questions? Is there a question or a motion? Mr. Mayor, you mentioned 2 things I want to clarify or follow up on with the questions. One was you mentioned Cooper Foster on the east side. That's not what we're talking about in our second
No, it's absolutely
agenda
not. The
item.
Cooper Foster program that we're gonna talk later is West Cooper Foster.
West side,
That's
correct.
something that's not gonna happen for a few years. That's gonna be a very expensive project, and we are gonna have to save some money for that. So that's why we're trying to do as much as we can over the next 2 years.
And the green space you mentioned in the cul-de-sac that Councilman Janik brought up, whose property is that, the green space in the middle of the cul-de-sacs are?
I'm not gonna be able to answer that. You know, I can find out for sure. It's probably the city's if it was dedicated properly, but sometimes these homeowner associations dedicate the street itself and leave these cul-de-sacs. So it's very possible the residents could own that through a homeowners association, but it's very possible that it is dedicated and belongs to the city.
So is that something we'll have to determine before? we
That's
make-
all part of the process.
Okay, great. That's the only question. Mrs. Wiseau?
We'll just take this to the floor of council.
Mr. Goodell?
Second.
I have a first and a second to send item A1607 to the floor of council. Roll call, or voice vote, please. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Second item I have is A1608, authorization to bid and award Cooper Foster Park and Road Improvements Phase 2. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just more road paving. This is an opportunity that the city has taken advantage of for as many years as I can remember. Some of this it's OPWC, it's the Ohio Public Works Commission. They give grants and they give zero interest loans. The last couple of years, we decided to take advantage of a little bit of money that is a zero interest loan. We have very little loans out there, and some of our loans are going to be ending, so it's a very small, it's about a $15,000 a year payment to get that work done now per year, interest-free. This is a continuation. It was a 3-phase project east of Oak Point Road. We went somewhere near the Hunt Club last year, and we hope to make another close to 3,000 feet. I think it's estimated about 2,800 feet, but we take the bid out completely, so if we're able to get a little bit more, we will go a little bit further. but just a way of taking advantage of some grant monies and some loan monies and getting some improvements done with the stormwater. There is some stormwater ditch work, a little bit of infrastructure, and new pavement on that stretch of road. And that money's not available till May or June, so again, I'm just bringing you this early so you can get 3 readings, give an opportunity for people to see what we're doing out there. I'll take any questions you might have.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have 2,800 feet, which from what I'm reading here is the same length of the Phase 1. But we've added 400 feet of North Quarry Road. Last Phase 1 was $206,176 in capital outlay and $40,000 in engineering fees. And this year adding 400 more feet, and I'm gonna assume there's a lot more drainage, there's a lot more berms, there must be a lot more catch basins, valve boxes, and grading, because we're seeing a substantial amount of money for this project compared to the other one. I noticed that we had, once again, looks like engineering fees are $85,000 versus $40,000. So I'm not sure what's going on. That's part of it, and the other part is the large capital outlay. I was just wondering if we are having to take on more infrastructure in this project compared to the Phase 1.
I don't have last year's numbers in front of me, but the total amount we're talking about, $730,000 for this project. You go through the proposal, the engineer maps it out pretty well. He talks about the entire project and the scope of their work. It doesn't seem out of the ordinary to me, and those costs in engineering are not to exceed. I would assume if there isn't the work he expects out there, it would be significantly less, but they're there in case it's needed. It's a project that went very well, I think, last year, and we want to continue the quality of the work that was done and make sure this project's done right.
I fully support it being done and done right. I mean, if we get our infrastructure in correctly, then our streets will last longer. I'm just concerned that we're going from a 2,800 foot Phase 1 to a 2,800 foot plus a 400 run, and we're jumping from 246,000 to, well, with everything in, you're looking at 730.
And remember, it's a bid process. It could come in lower, but the engineers are confident that the work must be substantially more, or those prices wouldn't be like that.
There must be some serious structural work there. Okay, I just didn't know if you recognized the huge jump in Phase 2. I don't know if we initially expected that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your efforts to continue our street program and working with the OPWC to make sure that we can pull these loans. I totally support you on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, you don't recall how much the Phase 1 was last year?
I don't. I hate to give you a number. It's not in front of me. I'm sure I know it, but I don't
I
want
can
to
give it to you
speculate.
right now. I got it pulled up right here.
That'd be great.
$206,176 for capital outlay. That was construction number 206.
What was our total? What was just the total project cost?
And then $40,000 for engineering, so it's going to be $246,176.
That we budgeted, not the total cost, because we had grant.
This
and
will be paid by
loan.
the city from its funds set forth in
See, that's not counting the OPWC.
Right.
at a
No,
cost
just
not
our
to
costs.
exceed. Okay.
So there's probably $400,000 more in there you're not accounting for.
So our cost is actually less this year for Phase 2 than Phase 1.
The engineering fee last year was $40,000. That was the gross amount. The city's amount was a percentage of that,
Okay.
so.
So right now
The
we're
numbers were kind of confusing.
right, and I think this is what's throwing me off here because we have 40. Now it's 40,000 versus 26.
And it might, these grants are written differently, and again, I can't speculate. It's very highly possible that the state paid their own share of engineering, but I
Okay.
don't know that to be a fact. I mean, each year these specs come out differently on these grants.
Our job
And I
is,
could look into it for you.
I appreciate
and have
that.
that answer.
Our job is to continue to keep an eye on these as well, so we're just trying to help
Mrs.
question
Wassell?
those.
Move to take this to the board, Council.
Mr. Goodell?
Second.
Mr. Kukuka, you had a comment?
No comment.
I have a first and a second on the floor to take this to the floor. I have, go to council. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. My final item is A1612, authorization to bid and award the tree trimming maintenance program. Obviously, this is a yearly thing that we do. Mr. Mayor?
I'd like to defer this to Mr. Jeffries, our Safety Service Director.
Mr. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you had mentioned, Mr. Brookbach, this is a program that we've done, looks like for at least the last 12 years. Very successful program. We're asking you, this will be a bid not to exceed $80,000. Of course, these efforts always help us in minimizing any electrical disturbances we might have during bad weather, so. Any questions?
Mr. Ventura?
Inevitably, one of the most common questions I get every year is what trees qualify to be trimmed under this service. Can you give us a quick overview of if residents?
It's probably better for the mayor. He's
Sure,
got a
if
better
residents have
understanding.
concerns about trees
There's
overhanging.
actually specifications recommended by the whatever National Electric Association. They talk so many feet from your primary line, so many feet from your secondary line, so many feet from transformers off the ground. These guys that bid this know what those specs are, and it's a measurement basis from your electric lines.
So if residents have any questions, contact the mayor's office and they'll be able to.
Yep, and this is primarily for the wires and lines that are within the public right-of-ways. Our arborists try, when we have issues in other areas, we try to take care of that in-house, but this is to get as much of our right-of-way electric lines cleared, and typically about a third a year, so every 3 years, we're completely clearing around every electric line in the city.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Kukuka?
Last 2 years, we've budgeted 125. Last year was 94,000, just to give council.
And this year we're requesting 80, correct?
Right.
We've only used 80 in this. Other trees that we might need a crane for. I mean, we budget more for that program, but we only bid and award this $80,000, I think, over the last so many years.
Great. Mr. Goodell?
I would just like to make a motion to take this to the floor of council.
Mrs. Wasil? Have a first and a second to take A1612 to the floor of council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Mr. Ventura?
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Janik?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:54. 7:54, thank you. It felt like 8:54.
Mark, I need a bigger screen on this, because I'm looking here in the ordinance, and very small print it's showing that the entire cost